There's a question I get all the time. Scott, hi, love the channel. I am stuck at a wedding in Idaho for the weekend, and it turns out no one has bothered to stock the bar. And the bride has just come up to me and said, look, there's a liquor store down the street about 2 blocks. Head over there, just grab a few things, whatever looks good. You know, something people are going to like. What am I going to be able to find there that is both, you know, mass produced and mass distributed enough to end up at that liquor store, but is also, you know, of reasonable quality and, you know, reasonable value? Well, I am going to do, this is part of a series to answer that kind of question. So we already did tequilas with a whole bunch of 50 milliliter sample bottles. I was not a huge fan of most of them, but we did set a bottom with the Casamigos Blanco. So we shall see what whiskey can do. I have got one Irish whiskey. I've already done Tullamore Dew and Jameson's. Now we're going to do Paddy's. I've got 3 Canadian whiskeys to try out, and then I got a bunch of bourbons too. So let's get to it. Starting us out is Paddy's. This is one of the least expensive Irish whiskeys you can buy on the shelf. This is a blend, of course, coming out of Middleton, like half the Irish whiskey shelf, bottled at 40%. I've always had a soft spot for this. It's very grainy. It's very, you know, there's not a whole lot of, you know, barley-derived spirit going into this, but you know what? I kind of liked it despite that. All right, here we go. On the nose, Paddy's. Yep, definitely most of this came off a column still. I'm getting a little bit of an ethanol-y note. But you know what? It's I don't really have complaints about this. It smells very. There's some vanilla. So it's both ethanol vanilla and also like actual like barrel vanilla. Touch of like sawdust. There's some like, I don't know, like you know, like meringue cookies, the little things that melt when you put them in. It smells a little bit like those. It's very kind of creamy, desserty. Simple, definitely very simple. And definitely bringing that kind of slightly raw, refined ethanol note, but you know, I've nosed worse whiskeys than this on the palate. You know what? Yeah, so it's certainly not good. Like, this is not a good whiskey by any means, but it's inoffensive. It's smooth, as they say. It's very creamy on the palate, despite its 40% strength, and that is part of what you get with multi-column industrially distilled spirit. A little bit of graininess, like a cream of wheat thing. Quite creamy, vanilla. Hint of like lemon rind. Touch of grassiness, banana peel, but it's really quite far in the background. One more time. Not good, but I don't hate it. You know, Paddy's, I'm fine with you. You know, man, you wanna come over, watch some old Iron Chef videos on YouTube, just hang out, maybe have a have a beer. I'm fine with that. Like, you're good to me. We good. I'm going to give this 74 points. Certainly not the highest score in the world, but you know, if I see you going to the Irish whiskey shelf and you grab this instead of like Jameson's or like proper 12 or whatever, like I'm gonna like that gets some respect, you know. All right, moving on. Oh, this is the one I'm excited about. Black Velvet. Black Velvet. I've never tasted this. You know, for my 20 odd years as a drinker, I have walked past the 1.5 liter bottles of Black Velvet many, many, many times, and I've always wondered, man, like this is like $8-10 for for a jug of this stuff. What can it be? What does it taste like? And now I'm going to find out. Black Velvet Blended Canadian Whisky, aged 3 years, bottled at 40% alcohol. Here we go. You know, the Casamigos was worse. I will say that right off the bat. Definitely some, like, just raw ethanol, corn, vodka kinds of notes. Dry erase marker. But there is like, what is that? Okay, like one vanilla bean and some kind of fruit, like maybe a slice of pear in there for fun. Maybe some of that lemon rind from the Paddies. That's in there too. The nose in the Paddies was certainly better, but it was also more expensive, so not really a surprise there. Okay, let's see what you got, Black Velvet, on the palate. I mean, I know that I said this about some of the tequilas too. It tastes cheap, but it actually is cheap, and I appreciate the honesty of this to some extent. Arrive's actually quite sweet. There is some kind of bitter candy, like actually it's like a watered down cola sort of note when it arrives. There's definitely some like ethanol-y, almost cardboardy bitterness on this. Yeah, that dry erase marker thing is definitely there on the palate. Hints of vanilla again. These are not fresh casks. Certainly not fresh casks. So yeah, certainly not good. But I've tasted worse things in my life. There's it doesn't feel like it's trying to be anything but, you know, super duper cheap whiskey mixed with healthy dosing of grain alcohol, of neutral grain alcohol. Score wise, we're in the 60s. I'm going to call this a 61 point spirit. Certainly not the worst thing in the world, but and you know, if times are hard and you just want something nice to make a 7 and 7 with, so to speak, I think this will do fine. It's not good, but I really don't have any. I can't, for the price, I can't raise objections. 61 points. Moving on. We stay in Canada. This is Seagrams VO. I did look around for a miniature of Seagram 7 for fun, but this is the closest I could find. Canadian Whisky, a blend. They're not saying how old this is. Canada's finest. I have my doubts about that. Yeah, 40% alcohol by volume. Let's see what we got. Similar sort of nose as the Black Velvet. Maybe bring a hair bit more fruit along with the slice of pear. There's a slice of apple in there. But we're continuing on with that kind of like corn vodka kind of feel. Yeah, it smells like there's a little bit of like a cardboard newspaper sort of thing going on. Maybe some lime in there as well. Vanilla. The sense that someone way off in the distance might be drinking a root beer. So yeah, kind of, at least on the nose, sort of in the same ballpark. Okay, on the palate. Still not good, not even remotely, but there's some more character here, more good character actually. No, it's still more positive character, I should say. And the mouth feels a little bit better, and the finish is a little bit better. Really, it just feels like a better version of the Black Velvet, which you would expect given the price point. Yeah, root beer, vanilla, corn vodka, still there. I mean, it's a 40% spirit, so it's pretty thin, but within that genre, it's definitely has a little bit of creaminess to it. It's not too bad. Finish, mouthfeel, they're not good, but yeah, they're better than Black Velvet. Yeah, one more time. An improvement, and a significant improvement. I'm still not getting this out of the 60s, but let's call this... I'll call this a 66-point whiskey. And you know what? If this is what you're stuck with, again, you could do a lot worse. And a lot worse for more money. All right, Crown Royal. I've always been torn about Crown Royal. It's because I want to, like, I've been waiting for 20 years for Canada to step up and be a really exciting whiskey producing, spirit producing region. They have the resources, right? They have all these, they have grains, they have these great distilleries, they have a bunch of old stocks, they have the ability to make, you know, new facilities. If those old stocks are not particularly exciting, there seems like a lot of resources to play around with Canada, and yet every time I come back to Canadian whiskey, it's a little bit of a disappointment, and I think maybe it's because it's so defined by this, the distinctive bottle, the nice velvet bag, although the sample doesn't have a velvet bag, and the perception of smoothness. I'd love to see Canada get away from that, but you know, you've heard this before from other YouTubers, so I will not dwell on the point. All right, anyways, Crown Royal, blended Canadian whiskey, 40%, very little information. Actually, of all these three, black velvet provides the most information about what's in the bottle. Oof. So we are back on, so it smells like Coca-Cola and dry erase markers. That's absolutely what it smells like. Really more Pepsi than Coca-Cola. Pepsi and dry erase markers. Some vanilla, white pepper. I'm struggling. I'm struggling to get notes out of this. There's still a little bit of that ethanol-y note that I was getting in the previous two, just not as much. I'm guessing well, I will say, so I remember trying this a few times over the last, 2 decades, and I remember it smelling worse than this. It smells vague, but it doesn't smell like it. I don't hate it. It just smells like kind of a vague, vague generic whiskey. That's sort of what this smells like. When you hand this to me blind, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't smell like a bourbon. It doesn't smell like anything from Ireland or Scotland. I don't know. It just smells like a whiskey. There's a little graininess, a little lemon peel. Lime as well. Okay, on the palate. Given the price point, you would expect this to be a step up from the previous two, and it absolutely is. It's much more substantial in the mouth, brings a lot of pepper to it. Some good white pepperiness. It doesn't bring the dry erase marker thing that I was worried about. There's still a hint of kind of ethanol in there, but it's actually just relatively well balanced. Yeah, vanilla, Pepsi, lime, ash, pepper. Maybe a little bit of like toasted pear or something. Touch of fruit. It's quite basic, but this is the best. From memory at least, this is the best Crown Royal I can recall having. This is actually, comparing this against some of the blended whiskeys I've had from Scotland and Ireland, I think I might actually like this more. I still don't think it's good. But yeah, this is, it's okay. This is okay. I'm going to give this, what do I give this? I'll give the same score as the Paddys. Let's give this a 74-point score. Yeah. No, let me try the Paddys one more time. The Paddys was better on the nose. This is better on the palate, but otherwise, actually quite close in terms of the quality. Yeah, 74 points for Crown Royal. Not good, not even close, but you can do a lot worse. All right, moving on. America, bourbon has the floor. All right, this should be, at least in theory, a strong performance, because as much as I and many others like to complain about bourbon pricing, a lot of it is focused on the complaints in the kind of premium and super premium sector. Once you're down to stuff that's, 10, 20, 30, maybe getting to the 30s, Bourbon actually, for the most part, offers a pretty good value propositions for the amount of, for the quality that you're getting. So, I could be totally proven wrong here, but let's do our lineup. All right, starting off with, hey, it's a Buffalo Trace product, Benchmark, Old Number 8 brand. I'm sure at some point this used to say 8 years old, but right now it's Old Number 8 in slightly misleading fashion. 40% alcohol by volume. This is extremely cheap, and it's the one Buffalo Trace brand store associates don't get asked about constantly. All right, on the nose. We are in Bourbon Town. And really, I mean, you get that kind of like Buffalo Trace signature right away. It's lots of cherry. Both like the fruit cherry, but also maybe like some cherry wood, like toasted cherry wood. Vanilla, certainly. Some vague graininess, like burned oatmeal, maybe. Again, with stuff bottled at 40%, it tends to be pretty vague, so I'm struggling to pull notes out of it. Maybe lime peel again. More cherry. I mean, honestly, it just smells like Buffalo Trace that's been bottled at 40%, and it's pretty young. But it's certainly a better nose than most of the rest of this stuff. So let's see what we got on the palate. So the 40% isn't doing this any favors. Finishes very fast. Mouthfeel isn't great. No, the length really isn't great. But you know what? This is okay. Actually, it's probably the best one so far. Hold on. This is the best one so far. Mouth kind of follows the nose. Cherry wood. Vanilla. Really like vanilla oatmeal. Brown sugar. I hate to use brown sugar as a note because it's so cliched, but definitely some brown sugar in this. Touch of sawdust. White pepper. Short finish, but in this context, it's doing fine. By the way, Heaven Hill stuff did not make it into this tasting because I, or rather Tom, already did those. You can go back and watch those reviews. One more time. There's not a whole lot to this, but what's there is very good, or not good, very positive, very well composed. It has some intensity. It has some character. It has balance. So you know what? I'm going to give this 75 points. 75 for Benchmark. Old Number 8 brand. Bourbon. All right, next up. An old classic, available literally everywhere. I don't care where you are. You could be on Mars and you can get a bottle of Jim Beam White Label Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Oh, it's 40%. I always thought this was 43. Okay, but it's 40%, which is annoying. So I was prepared for this to be like a, well, okay, now I'm glad I did these side by side because the black is 43, right? I'm not crazy. Black is 43. Sorry. All right, so I could have messed myself up by doing this out of order, but I didn't. All right, Jim Beam, white label. Inevitably, they're both bourbons, so there is a little bit of continuity with the benchmark, but overall, this is much grungier, much grainier. I mean, this, which makes sense, right? Like, Buffalo Trace distillate comes off there still at higher strength, right? In the mid to high 70s, as I recall. Buffalo Trace it's not as low as Wild Turkey, but it is like mid 60s. So you're talking about something that is much closer to the grain, much closer to the fermentation. Dill, certainly. Vanilla, sawdust. Like unroasted nuts, like green nuts. Touch of like floral character, a little bit of like like one wildflower in there. A mix of like, I hate to use it, brown sugar, but also like clover honey. And I don't know, just some mud or something, just muddiness. I'm actually delighted that America likes this bourbon so much because it is actually quite grungy, which I approve of. At least on the nose. On the palate, let's see what we got. Very close to the benchmark. There's a little bit more of a kind of stale bitterness on the back end, which is not good, but the finish also like just holds on longer, which is good. So yeah, the mouth feels better. Finish is better. Even the mouth length is a hair bit better, but there's also just that little bit of an off note. Tricky. So on points, probably pretty close. Again, vanilla, mud, dill, like crushed, rotting flowers, like the whole flower bed, basically. Some orange peel, maybe. That kind of green, unroasted nut note. I'll try the benchmark again. It's just personal taste between these two, honestly. Benchmark is lighter and cleaner and like fruitier. The Beam has more grunge to it. It's more substantial. But yeah, there is that kind of like unhappy bitterness on the mid palate going into the finish. Chutes and Ladders, I will give this the same score. 75 points for Jim Beam White. Not bad. I remember liking the Evan Williams, the standard Evan Williams, just a little bit better. All right, let's go to the first of our more premium bourbons, and this is Jim Beam. Again, except this is the black label, which is extra aged. It has a big 8 in the middle, but I don't think it actually says 8 years old anymore. So I'm trying to I should have done my research beforehand. At some point, this was an 8-year-old bourbon, and now it just has like this random 8 in the middle. Oh well, moving on. It is bottled at 43% though, so that is a little bit stronger than the rest of these. And it kind of shows. Oh yeah. How do I put this? Nosing this, it's like the versus the white label. It's like the difference between trying to watch a movie on your cell phone versus like a tablet. Like it's still not ideal conditions for watching a movie, but it's a little bit of a step up. It's a little bit more vivid. Yeah, we are definitely like we've moved on from like vague suggestions of dill to like full-blown asparagus, Brussels sprouts. Green nuts are still there, vanilla, sawdust. There is some cherry poking through though. Oatmeal, that floral thing again. That's funny. I don't really associate Beam with floral notes, but here it is. I don't know if it's the extra aging doing the work here, or if it's just the extra proof, but yeah, this just smells like a better version of the previous glass. Kind of more ashiness. Like a campfire-y thing. Nice, very savory, very green, earthy. Once again, I'm delighted that America likes Jim Beam because it is so, I don't know, so delightfully escapes the stereotype of American taste on the palate. Same kind of story. It's just a better version of the previous glass. Mud, flowers, like cooked vegetables, like baby broccoli. My household has been eating a ton of baby broccoli recently. Even the 2-year-old likes it. Dill, asparagus, Brussels sprouts. But vanilla, dried cherry, cherry wood as well. So there's that little nod to the benchmark. Maybe even a little cucumber as well. This is well, it's a big step up from the previous one. And actually, you know what? Like, step back, editorialize for a second. One of the problems I had with the tequila tasting I just did last week was there didn't seem to be that much of a difference in absolute quality when I was tasting the cheapy tequilas versus the more expensive stuff. Like you spend twice the money, 3 times the money, you expect like a big jump in what you're getting, and it just wasn't happening. Here, this just feels like a better product than, not by scale of magnitude or anything, but by a significant margin than the other stuff here. There's better juice going into it. It's better presented. And you're paying a little bit more money for it, but yeah, it's showing up. Would I still love to see this a higher proof? Yeah, I would, but I like this. I appreciate this. I'm going to give this... Still not going to go crazy. Can I get to 80? No, I don't think I can get to 80, but 79 points. 79 points. which I think is the best showing in this sort of whole tasting series so far. Well done, Jim Beam. This isn't too expensive, actually. All right, Bulleit. Bulleit Bourbon, Frontier Bourbon, I'm sorry. Relatively recent brand from Diageo. Yeah, so high rye, bottled at 45%. I know I've tried this. I remember nothing about it. I would just kind of like, you know, what went through one side and came out the other. So let's actually score this. Actually, quite fruity, which isn't that uncommon with rye-driven spirits, but I was expecting something much spicier, if you'll forgive the stereotype. But yeah, there's some. We're turning to the root beer happening in the Canadian whiskeys. There's also some a little bit of almost like a raspberry eau de vie kind of thing happening. Black pepper, cherry, most certainly. What is that? How do I put this? You know the brown sugar covered hams before you cook them, like that, just kind of like when the smell is mostly brown sugar and then the ham is like a backgroundy note. There's kind of that going on. It sounds like a nice ham that's been sort of dry aged for a while. This is just a regular brown sugar ham. Yeah, and despite the high proof, I'm actually having more trouble picking notes out of this than the Jim Beam. It's fruity, it's a little spicy, and a touch savory. Actually, there's some rosemary in there, which is nice, and some sweet tea, which is nice. On the palate. Once again, the slight nudge in proof up to 45 just helps this. At 40, this would be nowhere. It's still not my favorite by a long stretch of the imagination, but it's kind of showing up to play. Black pepper, sweet tea, cherry, some bergamot, rye toast. Sorry to use a rye tasting note to describe a rye-driven bourbon, but there it is. In terms of mouthfeel, finish, that kind of stuff, it's kind of right there on par with the Jim Beam Black, which is surprising to me because this is a little bit stronger. It's kind of a light touch to it, slightly floral again, but this time it's almost more of a slight perfumey aspect. Yeah, let me try the Beam one more time. I hate to have another tie, but yeah, these are right with each other, blow for blow, point for point. Same score, 79 points. 79 points for the Bulleit. personally, I think I would find myself reaching for the bean, but I'm not going to object if you personally find the Bulleit more to your taste. I think objectively they're about the same quality. And last up, Woodford Reserve. Woodford Reserve. I am old enough to remember when this was the hottest bourbon in the world ever. Like, it was impossible to get this stuff. It was it was the Blantons of its day. And now no one cares, even though they're actually doing some cool things. Anyways, Woodford Reserve, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Of course, you know the story behind it. It's got Forester there, but then you have the separate distillery with the pot still. Bottled at 45.2% alcohol by volume. And yeah, let's try this out. Ooh. On the nose, pepper and banana peel. We are getting the glorious Brown Foreman banana notes, and I'm all here for it. Cherry, really dessert cherry this time. Tree bark. A lot of pepper, sweet tea, really like Lipton sweet tea in particular. Hint of like mustiness, like old attic, musty old attic. Probably the most vivid of these so far on the nose. Yeah, nice little nose. Really, it's mainly about the banana and the vanilla and the cherry and the pepper on the palate. Of all these, definitely brings the most weight. And the pepper really, really dominates up front. This is okay. Nice little finish. Good mouthfeel. Decent mouth length. Not a ton of complexity to it. Like, this is not a grand old, complex spirit by any means, but there's something to this. Let me try to break it down. Okay. Black pepper. Lime and orange kind of in tandem. That banana peel thing, most definitely. Cherry, sweet cherry. That tree bark thing. It's really almost an Amaro note. What Amaro? I'm not sure, but it's almost like that intense kind of Angostura bark note, but just like toned way down. A little bit. It's a little bit there. It's a nice graininess, just kind of like a porridge thing. Like an unlit cigar, a little bit, especially when you on the inhale when you breathe in, like a Connecticut leaf cigar or something. Asserts itself very well. Yeah, I would absolutely give this. This totally gets into the 80s, not far, but gets up there. I would give this 81 or 82. I'll be generous. 82 points out of 100. And yeah, so that is the best spirit here, and is considerably cheaper than any of the aged Don Julios, or any of the Don Julios for that matter. So yeah, and that is your lineup. At the bottom, which is okay because it's cheap, Black Velvet with 61 points. Next up, not a whole lot better, but certainly better. Like, just you can tell it's better. It's just still not very good. The Seagrams VO, 66 points. And then where were we? We were at, oh yeah, Paddy's and Crown Royal tie for 74 points. Yeah, I honestly have no problem with it. So I knew I was kind of okay with Paddy's. So if you're drinking Paddy's and you're an Irish whiskey guy, that's cool. I was actually surprised how much I didn't hate the Crown Royal. This is all right. It's not good, but it's all right. And then moving up, like you'll notice, we're just kind of going up in progression. Let's see. Benchmark and Jim Beam White tie at 75. Bulleit and Jim Beam Black, sort of also tie at 79. And your winner on points is Woodford Reserve. In terms of value, I don't know. I have to double check the prices on these, but I might have to pick out the Jim Beam Black. It just feels like such a step up from everything else before it on the table, but also like the benchmark is like a little bit cheaper than Jim Beam White, isn't it? Whichever one of these two. Like these, actually both of these. I'm gonna give credit to both of these. These are both around $10, and the benchmark and the Jim Beam White are both totally fine. Do I prefer the Evan Williams? Yeah, but I mean, man, if you have a pretty limited budget, when you're making that trip to the Idaho corner liquor store, you just want to buy something that's pretty decent. These will do the job. If you're a little bit more budget, look into these two. Yeah, and that's the video. Thanks for watching, and cheers.